Welcome to Behind the Mask in Conversation with. Behind the Mask is a neurodivergent focused podcast that aims to offer support, knowledge, understanding, and most importantly, exposure to the neurodivergent community. If you are here, firstly, I hope you enjoy the episode. And lastly, if you are enjoying it, please like, follow, share, and subscribe because your support with this podcast can really help us push the message out. Keep being amazing all, and thank you. Hey, twin.
Oh, hey, go, hey.
Oh,
Let's turn that
down.
down.
Get this closer.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm alright. I had my hair done today.
You look glorious. You look glam. You're giving vibes. Having your hair done specifically for this, like I'm honoured.
I know.
Fancy
the things
that.
I do for you.
Can I ask why twin? Perrie, do you want to go for it?
I'll do very quick backstory. So when Greg first started doing lives, he joined a live with Paul, and I thought that Paul was the funniest thing I had ever heard in my life. Like, he was talking about a polar bear. It was amazing. Ooh. And I just thought, this man is the same as me. And then the more we started talking, the more we were like, oh my God, same. And
we are like so similar.
Planets aligned where we were like the same human being. So that's why we started calling each other twin. So now it is
twin.
It's just twin.
Standard. Yeah, she is the mental other side of me.
Sometimes.
Not mental as in you are mental, although we both are. Just got my daughter's diagnosis through Right to Choose. 2 months from referral. Thank you. Amazing. That is a way to open up the show. If I could get my arms in shot, I'd dab.
I don't know what I'm not very good at that. I'm not going to talk.
You look more like an Egyptian though, but I was here for it.
Yeah.
I'm really glad for that. So oh God, sorry. Just testing the mic. I hope it's okay, everyone.
It sounds good.
So context then. So whilst myself and Perrie are live, and then we may have a special guest at some point during our live, we won't have much context of the comments. I know a lot of you who are here will know that. But for those that don't, this is a podcast type broadcast situation. So Behind the Mask came out of a bit of a brain fart and a passion project, something I wanted to do last year and then didn't. Yeah, typical ideas. Sounds great, don't start it. But I'm glad I didn't, because where I am now compared to then, I can invest. I love it. So Behind the Mask is a neurodivergent podcast. So that could be featuring neurodivergent people. It could be for neurodivergent people, and each episode there's a new guest who's sharing their experience, their understanding, their background, their link to neurodiversity, and just us getting to know them in the hope that people can resonate and go, oh my God, that person is like me, pretty much like we did.
Yeah.
So yeah, without further ado, this is where I give myself a cue to cut off. Welcome to episode 5 of Behind the Mask in Conversation with, today, Perrie Belle. So many of you will know the voice, many will know the face as the voice and mastermind behind Hey Greg, but today's the day when we put the face to the camera and we find out about Perrie Belle herself. So welcome to Behind the Mask, Perrie.
Hi, thanks for having me. And just for everybody to get that little fix they might need. Hey Greg, I have a question.
I know that lady. The thing is, I know Greg's in the chat, and then his next probably just twitch like, "Where is she? Where's my question? Where's my light?"
Yeah, probably. What do I do now? But yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. I got a bit nervous. It's weird, isn't it?
Do you know what? Me and you would just chat all the time, but it's mad how you put this situation there, and it can change the dynamic.
Yeah.
So when we were discussing and this came about, I always knew I wanted to have you two on in some form, but I said very early on, I really wanted people to see and get to know you, because I think there's two parts to every couple, two sides to every situation, and not sides in a negative way, but like I'm blessed to know you two off the app and have friendship there. And yeah, I just think you deserve your time. And the beautiful thing is, I suggested it, and I heard Greg on the voice note go, "Oh yeah!" It was just like, yes, championing each other.
Yeah.
So, for anyone that doesn't know, tell us about Perrie Belle. So, who are you? Introduce yourself, my dear.
Okay. Hello, I am Perrie, or Perrie Belle. Perrie Belle is actually my full first name, normally with a hyphen in it, but Perrie is what we go as. Okay, the royal we. Apparently I've now become royalty now that I'm on being interviewed, so it's very exciting. So most of you know, as Paul has said, that I am the voice behind Hey Greg, a little project that we started up in August last year. But I've actually been on TikTok for a couple of years or so now. I started my own TikTok channel back in lockdown because my best friend was sending me TikTok videos. I was like, what's this? I have to start looking at this. And I found artists and got very excited. And so I started posting my own art on there. So I am a keen crafter, artist,
Yeah,
of things.
and very talented one at that, I may add.
Thank you. I'm taking compliments better than I used to. That's good.
You've got no choice. The world is watching.
I know.
Take them.
And listening. So yeah, I don't know. What do you want to know? I'm open book. I will
So, like we as with every episode, like this one was no different. We had a chat Wednesday. We probably had about an hour and a half chat and kind of worked out kind of like what my thoughts were, where you're comfortable, what you're happy with. And in typical your fashion, it was like, if there's a learning opportunity and an understanding opportunity, we go there. Like there's no kind of boundaries to sharing experience. But for me, as with everyone you meet on this app, like this app might be the start of a friendship, but before an app is a person. And I know a lot of things you've shared with me, but tell us about Perrie Belle. So let's take it way back. Who is Perrie Belle as a person? What are you about?
Oh, you mean before TikTok?
Pre-TikTok. So tell us, what did life look like before TikTok for you, and before what we see as you and Greg?
So, it's tricky, isn't it? So before TikTok, before Greg, I think is probably where I need to go.
BG, before
Yeah.
Greg.
BG. I was quite a timid human. I've always had my quirks. I've always been a bit loopy. People say weirdo. I think that sounds negative. So I'm quirky and I'm happy with it. And I didn't know that was okay. I didn't show off my art to anybody. I was kind of a little shielded Perrie. But I've always been a dreamer. I've always been the type of person to float off in my mind somewhere else. And finding Greg and then finding my TikTok family has helped me just go, hi, this is me, and I'm happy to be me, and you guys seem happy for me to be me, and that's okay. So yeah, that was like, what, 10 years I've just gone for you.
Yeah. But before TikTok, you mentioned obviously, like there's only so much masking you can do, and our isms and quirks always are going to come out and things like that. But like we spoke, and neurodiversity has kind of been prominent in your life from the get-go, but not probably in the way in which people would assume, because we'll cover it in a bit, but it came quite late to you as far as knowledge.
Yeah.
But neurodiversity has always been prevalent, like there in your life and stuff like that. So talk us through that. So we spoke about your family and neurodiversity sitting within family, and what that looked like for you growing up in a neurodiverse family without knowing.
Yeah. So I am the oldest of 3 children. There's 3 siblings. There is 7 years between me and my younger sister, and she had issues at school, behavior problems. She's the only person I know that was expelled from, I think, 3 or 4 primary schools. So she had some big issues. And she was taken to a child psychologist that diagnosed her with ADHD. And apparently she was going to grow out of it because she's a kid. And we as a family had to go to certain counselling sessions so that we could learn how best to manage her problems. And so everything was focused to that for a very long time. And that's okay, that, you know, the support needed to be there for her. But it meant that that big old net that was there, the rest of us slipped right through it. And so I didn't ever think about what that could mean for me, because it wasn't about me.
You had 2, didn't you? Like the lack of knowledge in, well, 3, lack of knowledge in general, the understanding that didn't really happen in girls. So straight away you kind of go, yeah, well, the chances of that being 2 in one family is not there. And then actually not knowing that your experiences and what you were living in, the shoes you were walking in, were very much a neurodivergent one.
Yeah. And then on top of that, I think I don't know if it was because I was the oldest or just my personality growing up. I was very good. I was never naughty, really. So I may not have presented in a way that could have been obvious to a child psychologist in the 90s. So I think there was an accumulation of all of these different things that made anything that I was going through internally not explored.
And how was that experience, going, kind of being in a family where retrospectively now you had your needs just as well as your sister, but based on circumstance, as you said, like the attention needed to be there, your sister needed that focus, but in turn it shifted any focus or support away from you and almost lessened indirectly what you were experiencing, because the importance level of it kind of, it wasn't at breaking point, but actually it was always rumbling underneath. Like, how was that for you?
Difficult, very, very difficult. And I know that a lot of people have problems with their families, and I'm no different. And I remember many times being told that my needs weren't important and that all that mattered was what she was going through, and that we needed to make sure that we as a family supported her. And that does something to a growing mind. And I think the last time that happened, I was maybe 18. And so I'm still young, I'm still growing and understanding, trying to figure out who I am as a human being, and being told that I'm not important. That was rough. And I think that probably helped snowball a lot of my internalizing of all of my own neurospicinesses and not thinking that I had them. Even up to knowing you would like, yeah, come on. And I'm like, nah, I only took the freaking ADHD online assessment, 2-3 weeks ago now?
Yeah, 3 weeks. I think it was during episode 1, you messaged and you went, I'm going to do it. I think David's closing section was kind of, he would implore anybody to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were like, okay, gonna do it.
Fine.
And then you messaged me, it's like, riddled.
Yeah. And so I definitely didn't think that A, I had it, or B, it wasn't important if I did, up until recently, very recently.
So you manage it better externally, so actually you just cope with your own lane and we'll focus here.
Yeah.
And how did that manifest in school? So you were experiencing all these things in the family. How did that manifest in you through education, school or college and further ed? Because I know you mentioned that you ended up in an art school. Of course you ended up in the arts. Where else should you be?
Well, but not these arts, so we'll get there. So
yeah,
at primary school, so recently I came across, my granny kept everything of mine. I came across my school reports all the way from primary school all the way up through secondary school, And every single year it says along the lines of, if Perrie applied herself, she could go places.
That old chestnut.
Perrie would do really well if she didn't sit there daydreaming. Perrie would do really well if she actually concentrated in class, or if she wasn't away with the fairies. It was all of these over and over and over and over and over again. Perrie's really bright, but she's not doing enough. She's not finishing her task. Those things happened every single year. And I remember getting some of these reports back, even in secondary school, and being upset that I was told that I wasn't doing good enough. Because now I look back and I was just like, I was doing great, thank you.
Yeah, and I think at the time it's that, like, you were giving what you were able to give, and then probably some which then led to you being knackered or whatnot. And actually, enough didn't measure against the expectation they had, rather than what you were capable of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's such a dangerous measurement of, our expectations are here, but actually you're only capable of giving there, so you're never going to get there. So all you're going to do is sit in this negative space of people going, what, you're giving everything, not good enough.
Yeah, it was awful.
It translates, doesn't it, as well, into later life. It sticks there.
Yeah,
And I think
it does.
it feeds into things for you.
Yeah, and I think, so if I had that at school, then with what I was being told at home together, that then has put a lid on the success criteria I have.
It's capped your potential for you.
Yeah, so then after school, I actually wanted to go and do art. I wanted to go and study fine art and, be an artist and all of that. Oh, thank you. But I ended up pivoting and I studied performing arts instead.
Pivot.
And that pivot was the best thing I did, because I was quiet, I was timid, I was yes sir, no sir, whatever you say all the time. And then I did a national diploma, which was 2 full years, as I didn't do A levels. I did a national diploma, so it was all in one course, one focus for 2 years, so that I had 24 modules of different performance-based things, and it made my confidence grow. I was able to talk to absolutely anybody, and I'm still like that now. I don't care who you are. I will come up to you and be like, hi, I'm Perrie, how you doing? And I hyper-focused, now I know what it was, on that course so much that I got, out of 24 modules, 22 of them were a distinction.
That's amazing.
And so it helped me be me. And then there's a shame that there was a little bit of trauma that happened after that made me go back into my box a bit. But I do believe that the performing arts helped me realize that it's okay to be quirky and it's okay to be a bit flamboyant, because I was with my people.
And it is, you find your people in similar places, don't you? And I think the performance space in general and the arts in general is so like riddled with neurodivergent people, because for so long, if that was the type of person you were, that's where you need to sit to be able to express that.
Yeah.
But maybe that was like, thinking about how you were feeling school and at home and stuff, that was the first place you were properly able to unmask without realizing what you were doing, which is why it probably felt so good to you.
Yes, exactly. I haven't even thought about it as I'm asking, but yes. And I tell you what, I remember, can I tell you really quickly a ridiculous
absolutely
story?
This is your time.
So every of the 2 years that we were there, for Christmas we did a panto, and it got to the point in the last year we only had 8 students left in our year of our of college, because people join performing arts thinking it's going to be easy, and there's actually a lot of hard work you have to put in. And so we decided that we were going to do our interpretation of a night on TV instead of a panto.
Okay.
And that was so that we could make our own variety show, because we had singers, we had dancers, and we had actors. We had some people that did some. I can dance and I can act. I can't sing. I love singing. I shouldn't sing. That's one of the ones that I only got a merit in.
You absolutely should.
No.
For a short while.
I would do karaoke and you'll all want to leave, but that's okay. But So our interpretation of a night on TV, so we had Top of the Pops that we did. So I did a dance to Michael Jackson, full dance routine on my own. We had adverts, or we had a Durex advert. So it was really quirky. It was,
Durex?
yes.
Like condom advert?
Yes. We had a
Of
Talk to
course you
Frank
did.
advert.
What advert are we doing? Safe sex, guys.
Yeah, we're at college. Come on. We did the weirdest things you can imagine. And when I think about them,
I'm here for it. I just want to see the video.
Yeah. But I did have a video and a family member taped over it with them going scuba diving. So I don't have it anymore. I can recreate some of it for you. We did the Cell Block Tango from Chicago. It was awesome. But the point is that it was the weirdest concoction of stuff, that it was quirky, from Durex adverts to Talk to Frank adverts, a random skit from Coronation Street, as well as Top of the Pops. And the whole thing started with me in a dressing gown, sat in the audience with a giant remote control, asking my fellow performing arts nerd what he wanted to watch on TV with an old lady accent.
Go on.
All right, love. It was, think of Catherine Tate Granny. That's what we did. But now when I think back on it, I had a lot of influence on what we were doing. That was all me. The weirdness, the not being able to do just one thing.
That was inside your head, in front of your eyes.
Yeah, and it was completely unmasked. Nobody judged it. Nobody that was around me in that little circle, including my college tutors, who all thought it was a great idea. Everyone just promoted what I was doing and lifted me up and made me feel like I was on top of the world and that I could achieve anything. And after that, I went and auditioned for the Oxford School of Drama, who only accept 8 students a year, and I got in because of the confidence they gave me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go because it cost too much money. But the fact that I can say, hand on heart, I got in because of the fact that I was mindful. I felt safe, I felt confident, and I was lifted up with people that were like-minded. And I think that is such an important thing in all aspects of your life.
And it's almost full 180, 360, whichever one it is. Which one is it? 180, flip side, 360, right back to that point even. Yeah. That now we're in a space that was the place that started to lift you into a place of being authentic. And then unfortunately, like, life took over, like adulting kicks in, and doing what you think we should do and doing life as we think is mapped for us. It's crap.
Boring. It's so boring. I mean, I love being an adult because I can go to bed when I want most of the time. But the other stuff, growing up as a trap, don't do
it. I nearly said other times she goes to bed when Greg wants. But yeah, we'll leave that one there. Anyway, moving on.
Yes.
So from there then, so you mentioned that it gave you your confidence, but unfortunately then life took that away from you.
Correct, yes.
In as much as you're comfortable to kind of share, what happened then to have gone from this place? You've secured a place in one of the top performing universities. You had thrived in a creative space which celebrated you being you, and you'd start to find yourself.
Yeah.
To then find yourself in a position where you were as lost as you've identified to me in our chat. Mm-hmm. Kind of what did those years look like to kind of break away? And I think the reason kind of a journey is important in some ways is because to see you now and to know you were there before, but you got back there. I think that's the beauty in all of this. Yeah. The way you've got there is unfortunate, but the beauty is actually you can get back there with the right people and being you.
Yeah. So after college, and I didn't go to Oxford, I decided I was going to work a year. I'll take a year out just working, save up loads of money, and I'll go to university instead, just standard normal university in Winchester for a performing arts course, because I thought if I'm good enough to get into the Oxford School of Drama, I can just go to uni and then I'll make it big somewhere else, and that's fine. And then I met my ex-husband, and that is when everything went downhill in terms of my career prospects. Unfortunately, I listened to a lot of negative things around me. And then at the same time as that happening, my chronic pain started to ramp up. So I had an accumulation of these things that naturally bring you down after all of this amazing uplifting stuff. So it did fully outweigh the wrong way. And although it was really horrible, there was some, obviously 11 years with somebody, there was the positive things as well. I won't say that it was all horrid, but it was pretty awful. Those moments of it being pretty awful are now learning experiences for me, because I can look back and go, well, I definitely wouldn't let somebody treat me like that now, or I definitely wouldn't do that now. But when it comes to the lifting me back up to where I am now, I do feel that the journey from that Perrie in 2011 Perrie to 2021 Perrie, it took a lot longer to get back up there to what it did when I first went to college to do performing arts.
Firstly, thank you for that. Can we touch back on, so you mentioned chronic pain, and I know you shared before the root of that, and we spoke about there seems to be an apparent link and kind of familiarity between chronic pain conditions and neurodivergency. Obviously yours is kind of rooted and linked to something else, but actually the aftermath and the pain afterwards and how you're experiencing it, it seems familiar in a different form in so many people, and women as well, mentioning like how they experience pain and things like that. So what was the root of that? You've mentioned before kind of what the root cause of your pain and things were. Are you comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a condition called endometriosis, and they actually found something called adenomyosis. I think I said that right. Which is a condition that affects your lady areas. Basically, womb lining grows outside of the uterus and causes deep, disgusting pain. And that actually started when I first started my periods, and just ignored in a similar way to a lot of people with trying to get diagnosed with different neurospicinesses. The same thing happens to women when they go to the doctors about period pain. Like, I've heard so many people talk about it, and I'm like,
medical gaslighting's becoming something that I keep seeing at the minute. And obviously we spoke about like before about GPs kind of unintentionally gaslighting, but this medical gaslighting term is coming about, and it makes so much sense, and especially to, as you say, what you were experiencing and being shrugged off and whatnot.
So I had 11 surgeries. From the first one was in 2011, all the way up until last year. I've had 11 surgeries related to endometriosis, because I was told that there's nothing wrong with me, it's just a period. Then I was told that I had IBS. Then I was told I was overweight. Then I was told that it was all in my head and that it was phantom pain. And then they've done some exploratory surgery. They then gave me the Mirena coil, which then they accidentally sliced in the wrong direction, and I won't go too graphic, but it had to be removed while I was awake. Eventually I had the means with the company I'm working for now to be able to go privately, and I had private appointment. They did exploratory surgery. Yep, you've absolutely got endometriosis. What do you want to do about it? These are your options. And I, in November 2022, had a hysterectomy where they took my fallopian tubes and my uterus out at 36 years old. I don't want children, so I'm quite lucky in that sense. There are a lot of people out there who have to have this kind of surgery and aren't able to have children. But one thing sorry, I know I'm yabbering.
No, but I think what you're saying is important, and I think a lot of women will have either experience what you're saying or certainly know somebody that's had a similar. And there's a lot of pressure on women about this children thing. And I know you're saying you didn't want them because when you made the decision, it wasn't something you had to sacrifice. Then it was kind of
Yeah.
decision, but
It was
there are.
tricky. Yeah, it's still tricky, and I still every now and then get emotional about the fact that that decision was removed from me. I'm now not able to make that choice later on if I choose, but I'm mostly at peace with that now. But the problems now that I'm noticing, the more and more I learn about ADHD and the fact that we think I've got it right, is that when I get overly emotional because of, I don't know, the light isn't right, and I don't know
I'm not okay.
I can't regulate that emotion, my pain ramps up. So just because I had that hysterectomy, there is no cure for endometriosis. It will always be with me, and it's all hormone based. So it can now grow. Well, it could have grown anywhere, but having my uterus removed meant that it's now less likely to get as severe, but it's still there. So I still have days where I'm in a lot of pain, and I will, total transparency, today I have been in a lot of pain. And earlier I was just like, oh, I can't believe I've got to do this because of the pain. And then, so I get this weird kind of cycle that happens that when I'm in pain, I can't control other things that I could normally deal with easier.
Your
So
eye has to be in one place, so these kind of run wild.
yes. So if I'm struggling with, what's the thing that I get? When I get really zoomy, when I have to go to bed, yeah, really, like you asked Greg about it when we invite him on, like the zoomy Perrie mixed with me being in pain is like awful, like absolutely awful. And I the other way around as well. So if I'm really struggling emotionally, it can make the pain worse. So I do have this kind of mix of ADHD symptoms and chronic pain that I have to manage. And sometimes I get that super sweet spot in the middle where the pain, I can bear it and I'm not thinking about it too much. And the ADHD quirks are the quirks. And I'm like, all right. And so that sweet spot. When I went to the yellow field and danced around like a dickhead in a yellow field, that was my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So
you were there for it, and you were sat in the moment and lived for it.
And it was the most beautiful colour in the whole
And it
world.
was that picture was like gorgeous. I messaged it and I was like, what even is that flower?
Right. And so next year we will come and find one between where you are and I are, and then you will get to experience not only the yellow field, but Perrie Belle in a yellow field.
I want to dance with you in the field.
Oh, yes. Please.
Like full on Florence and the Machine, boho hippie, best life.
Yeah, we'll get Greg to film it, and then when we play it back, it'll only be in slow motion.
Yeah, run back for your mother, run back for your father. Yes.
Yeah.
And then that leads us to relationships and connections. So you've mentioned how your life's kind of been surrounded by kind of unsteady relationships, shall we say, and unsecure and unsafe and suppressing situations that have kind of led you in this up and down of finding yourself, going back in your box, know your place, and then we move on to sweet
Greg.
Sweet Greg. And that is how a lot of people know you. Like Greg and Perrie are Dick and Dom, Anton Deck, PJ and Duncan, Sam and Mark, from the local people to the Black Country. Just throwing that out. But it is, and that is where everyone's journey started. And when we spoke about this episode, I think one thing that a lot of people see and regularly comment about is how to say you're in a neurodivergent relationship from a place of not knowing how you champion each other, how you support each other, how you have an understanding of each other. What everybody sees is beautiful. But we spoke before that kind of that wasn't it wasn't that kind of happy moment. You met your person, it happened, and haha, like you both have said, and we'll bring Greg in imminently, that that journey has been a lot of work.
Yeah.
And something I thought from a relationship angle would be good is kind of exploring that, and kind of there's a lot of people in relationships who find it tough and they don't act, they say they're working on it, but are they working on it? And you're a beautiful example of a success story. And I think, yeah, let's look behind the mask at Hey Greg and Hey Perrie.
Yeah.
Are you ready, love?
Might be. I've got to share the limelight now, though, haven't I?
Yeah. Hey Anush. So
Jokes.
yeah, we're now going to bring Greg in, and we will have a chin wag. Where's Greg? There's Greg.
Sweet love, come on.
Sweet love.
Yeah, you caught me as I was trying to send a wave to Nush, but no. Hey, Nush.
Yeah, just wave on cam. Hey.
Yeah.
Yes. So we find ourselves here. This is Greg and Perrie and Greg. So I'm gonna say, because people that might be listening on the podcast. So for anyone that doesn't know Greg is a TikToker through alongside Perrie, who's his wife, and he operates under a familiar sound, which is what, Perrie?
Hey, Greg, I have a question.
Boom. So ADHGreg on TikTok, he puts multiple pieces of content out to educate, to inform, to explain, to articulate, to understand, and that is a combination of these two wonderful people creating this platform and bringing a lot of us together. But yeah, so from the angle of the podcast and the relationship side of things then, so how would you describe pre-understanding a neurodivergent relationship before you knew it was neurodivergent? What did that look like? What did pre-TikTok Greg and Perrie look like for the pair of you?
I mean, Perrie and I have had this discussion a lot, especially in the last sort of year or so. But when we got together, there was that ADHD intensity, that human hyperfocus element that comes with it. But we both came from pain, essentially. We sort of found each other in a moment of trying to not be in pain anymore. And I think we sort of discovered something else about ourselves in that sort of meeting, in that moment of starting to sort of get together, the early days of a relationship and stuff. But I also think that we hadn't started a real healing journey. So we did put a lot of pressure on each other to be the resolution for all of our problems.
We were traumatized trying to heal each other instead of ourselves, I think.
Yeah. And
but amongst that, when you first met then, so knowing what you know now, and it's probably going to be a common thing, looking back, did you meet and find yourself being unmasked, which is why you connected? Or did you start forming a relationship based on the versions that you two thought you had to put out? Like, what did that look like?
I think I was intermittently masked in the early days anyway, because when you and I met, I was masking pretty hard for everything. Not that I knew what masking was back then, but I mean, my appearance, my sort of engagement with other people, everything was heavily masked, almost deliberately designed to sort of keep people away from me. So I'm not sure that I was quite.
But
I've seen early day pictures, and one demographic you were not keeping away from you is the LGBTQ plus men. Like I have seen the receipts.
I've got more.
Go you! If I could high five you, Perrie, I would. Like you got that.
I think I was unmasked, but desperately trying to be loved. So I was unmasked in the point of the quirky Perrie was back, but was trying to be what I thought Greg wanted me to be at the same time. Does that make sense? Like
And what
two
did that look
conflicting
like?
things.
So going into it, what was your perception of what you needed to be in a relationship, Perrie? And then same to Greg after Perrie.
I think I needed to be a yes person, is what I thought. I was very yes, whatever you need to everyone all the time. And I thought that's what Greg needed and wanted. And actually now we know that actually it's not. I should just be me. Doesn't need to be a version of me, just me.
Yeah, I mean, I had come from relationships where the things I liked were not cool enough, or not interesting enough, or not necessary enough. So I started trying to put away the things I loved most, the nerdiness and the sort of eccentricity of how I wanted to live my life. And I figured that Perrie was the same. I figured that she wouldn't be interested in all my nerdiness, and she wouldn't want to know all of that. And I mean, in fairness to Perrie, she broke through that very quickly. Because Perrie's energy, Perrie's vibe came through pretty powerfully in those early days, and I started to understand that maybe I had misrepresented Perrie in my mind.
Well, she had to tell you she wanted to date you, didn't she?
Yeah,
like
not
she
even
was
open to that, yeah.
literally walking around, putting a scent out, going, here I am.
Yeah.
And in the end, just had to go, Greg, for crying out loud, I want to go on a date with you.
The only thing that would have made him realise how obviously I was flirting with him was if I had just gotten naked in front of him. And then, even then, actually saying that out loud, I'm pretty sure you'd have still done the awkward thing you actually did when I told you I thought you were hot, and you'd do this.
Looking back and sort of in hindsight, knowing where that Greg was, if you had hypothetically just dropped all your clothes, I think the first thing I would have said was, you seem to have dropped your clothes.
Did you mean to leave these there?
Like, are you okay? Do you want some help?
Like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how long would you say that honeymoon period, that kind of just, it is like, again, what we now know to be that dopamine, when you meet somebody and you connect, that electricity, that dopamine, it's just like num 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 num. I want some more, like tasty, give me more. I don't know whether that's a good reference for what we're talking about, but I'm going with it. Num num num, I want some more. But yeah, so how long did that last for? Like, was it a long period of time? Was there a period of time when you remember thinking, oh, this is changing?
I think we crammed like 6 months of proper relationship sort of checkpoints into 2 weeks. I think I moved in the first 2 weeks, didn't I?
You didn't leave. You haven't left.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
No, joking. So yeah, it was supposed to be a one night stand. That was supposed to be a bit of fun, and it got very intense very, very quickly. So I agree with Greg. It was, we did cram a lot into that first few weeks, and then there became too much, I think, for both of us. So we were separating for 5 months. We weren't really properly separated.
We tried to
do what you will with that information.
Yeah.
And then when we got back together again, we had both kind of realized the things that we needed to adjust in our lives so that we could be happier humans, not necessarily together, but just in general. And then we got back together, and then since then there was another little honeymoon phase at the beginning of that, I think, but it settled very quickly into niceness.
And you mentioned there about things you had to work on individually and things like that, and it's kind of jumping a little bit, but still very relevant. Like there was something you said when I was just talking to you two on the phone call, was like there was a huge part of your relationship where it was literally at a make or break thing. And when you say about working on yourselves and stuff like that, you use the term kind of like turning the mirror on yourself. Like that was the biggest part of building a relationship to be where it is now, because like so many people probably don't realize, and it's not something that everybody would know or realize, but like you getting here has been work, like for the pair of you. And I think it could be easy to assume that two neurodivergent people in a relationship is magic and it's beautiful and stuff, but actually it could be chaotic, especially when you didn't know.
It's all of those things.
Yeah.
And I think so. The little jump, I'll quickly give the context so that then Greg can get word in. So that happened back in 2017. So it was very shortly after we got together. We went through that honeymoon period. We had a little separation. We got back together. Then we were great. We got engaged. We got married during lockdown. Like all of that was great. But then there have been things niggling in the background where I've got my own traumas and own things I needed to deal with, and so did Greg. So then there was a snowball effect. So things got bad again, and it got really bad, and that's when we started to walk that line of it being make or break bad with our relationship, because we didn't know where we were. We didn't know who we were as human beings, and that was about this time last year.
And I think like with that, like if we dissect that cycle, it went really fun, reality kicking, down, fun, reality kicks in, wedding, fun, reality kicks in, down. And actually the common denominator there was you probably never worked on the things that you needed to, but actually the fun part in the relationship and the enjoyable things to look forward to kind of carried that momentum up and down. And then you got married, and it's like, where now? Like we're back at that place of what we both need to do, and that leads nicely into that kind of turning the mirror against each other. And you mentioned a conversation that you had. You've said previously it was that make or break thing in the car, where it's just like.
So like, yeah, Perrie and I. Thing is, I think of it like when Perrie and I met, we had like an 18-wheeler truck each of baggage. And we kept those trucks, and some baggage fell off and we were okay, but we kept those trucks and we never actually dealt with the trucks themselves. And we were doing quite well. I mean, this is the thing. When things got rough, love was never the problem. Respecting each other was never the problem. We had brought so much with us and we just didn't know what we were doing with it. And we had this habit, we still do. Some of our best conversations, some of our most engaged conversations happen when we go for a drive. So when Perrie gets like cabin fever and needs to get out of the house, we'll drive around for an hour. There's nice places around here, so we'll just sort of drive and look at the scenery, and we'll engage in conversation. And normally it starts silly and superficial, regular conversation, and then we'll end up solving the world's problems, right? And we went for a drive about a year ago after I'd already started getting much, much worse mentally. And the purpose of the drive was to have a conversation. And we had gotten to a point where we were like, we're in trouble here. And this is it. We were sort of towing this like walking a tightrope. Either this is going to get resolved or this is it. And we need to have that discussion and we need to make that decision. And we decided in that conversation that while we were very close to it all ending, we would commit to trying everything. And once we had exhausted everything, if nothing had improved, then we go our separate ways. And it was that sense of, if we don't resolve this, we have already agreed in this moment that if it doesn't resolve, it's over. And that's a very hard conversation to have, but we had stopped trying to worry about each other's feelings in the respectful way of saying, I'm not going to hide pain, I'm not going to lie to you, even if telling the truth hurts, I'm going to do it anyway. And we both had this, I mean, we're in that car for like 2.5 hours, tears and difficult conversations, and yes, we hurt each other's feelings, and yes, we scared each other a little bit, but it had to be done. And I think that realigned everything. You almost let most of the truck go by that point, because you're like, well, I don't need any of this now, because now I'm in trouble. None of this stuff matters anymore. Now it's, what do I do next? And we both made the conscious decision to go into therapy. And we both made the conscious decision to start saying thoughts out loud, even if they were nonsense. Just getting into this habit of, I don't feel good. And instead of pretending that I do, I'm going to say it out loud. I'm going to say, look, Perrie, today I'm struggling. I'm not doing well. And we found that during doing the therapy and being that open, that raw with each other, I don't fully remember who we used to be.
And it feels like the journey's been a lot longer than just under a year.
Yeah.
So it feels like we've been this version of us in a relationship the whole time. And when we talk about the people that we used to be, it almost feels like a fuzzy dream, because we have opened up so much. I feel closer to Greg now than I ever have. And I loved him to bits before, and he was my best friend. But now I'm like, I love him, and he's my bestest friend. You know, like there's so much more to it.
And understanding.
Yeah, because we've just been so open, and the communication is so open now that we can lead with, this isn't about you. What I'm about to tell you is about me. And he goes, I hear you. You've given me the context up front, so I don't need to panic. And then whatever comes out of my mouth, there's no offense that is taken from Greg, because he knows that there's no intent of offense from me. And that immediately has brought so much more understanding. So then when it came to Greg's journey of learning about his ADHD, we'd already started that. And so then that came, and we were still at the beginning where we were still kind of figuring it out. And my brain, I'll be honest, I've said this to him, my brain was like, ADHD? I was like, the fuck? What?
Yeah, like you had the reaction that society had fed you.
Yeah, the reaction, not remembering what happened with my sister when I was a child. I didn't remember any of that. And so it's like, what? And now I look at that and I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. That was really rude of me. I shouldn't have reacted like that. But, you know, I got to see it.
There's a thing that jumps, that we talked about it on a different car conversation, since it jumps out at me because it tickles me. In movies, they talk about when two people break up in a movie, they say things like, "You're not the man I married." And I always thought that was funny, because we're not supposed to be. I'm not supposed to be that guy. That was years ago. If I was still him, we'd have a serious problem. I'm supposed to grow, right? So Perrie's not the woman I married, in the best possible way. The woman I married was lovely, lovely human. But she changed into something more. You're supposed to grow. You're not supposed to stay as you are. And I think I'm guilty of it too. I had this belief of when you get together and you find the person, it's easy. Like, it's not exactly difficult either, but you are supposed to put some effort in. Whereas I used to think, well, now that I found the person, there we go. No more trying. No, Greg.
I think you can only put an effort in if both people are willing to push, because actually what you create then is something in the middle. If one person's pushing, the other one's pulling away, there's just chasing going on, and it's never going to meet in the middle at the point the conversations and growth happens. And for anyone who is listening on the podcast or on YouTube or anything, Greg, so you mentioned a point prior to the Hey Greg situation. Can we just touch on slightly how you found out about your ADHD? Because that is a significant kind of state. It's not the first steps. The steps were already being taken, but actually it went from like a plank of wood and it opened up a stairway, and it just kind of probably elevated and accelerated the growth in both of you. And I think it's an amazing story. And also I think for so many people who are late diagnosed, and also people looking in at late diagnosed and going, why do you need a diagnosis at this age? It's an example of why it's so important to people, to me, to Perrie, to Greg, and to you guys who's watching.
So the thing is, I was thinking about this after I was chatting to you last, because I was trying to remember the sequence in my mind, because that's how my brain works. And I remember getting hints I was chatting to Chris yesterday. I remember getting hints from other people's content that maybe there's something there, but I wasn't focused very hard on that. I was somewhere else, and I'd gone into therapy to deal with
You were working on stuff, weren't you? Like
Yeah.
you were actively doing stuff to work on yourself.
And after my first therapy session, I've told Perry this. I've never said this on a live before. My first therapy session, it felt like, and I'll choose my words carefully because of the platform we're on. It felt like I passed away. It felt like the end of that session. Perry wasn't in the house. I had deliberately done that first session alone. It was a Zoom session, and I shattered into a million pieces. And after that session, I used to call my mom every week and my brothers back home. So I called my mom. I was sitting on the couch and I was chatting to her about this process that I was going through and how bad everything was. And I said, listen, Mom, I've got this vague memory of you taking me to a special doctor. I don't remember why. I don't remember when, what the point was. She said, oh, yeah, it's because I got you checked for ADHD. And I was sitting here with Perry just like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, yeah, we did it again a few years later.
I do not think this would have been useful, Mother.
And I said then, I don't like to upset my mother, but sometimes I get a little annoyed at her. And I remember just being like, you don't think I needed this over the last 30 years? You don't think this should have come up? She's like, well, we couldn't do much for you, so we didn't. I was like, hey, Mom, I've got some stuff I got to tell you now. Like, and the other thing I'd asked her is because I have this weird leg issue in my right leg. I was like, hey, Mom, you're my mother. I was around you the most. What's up with my leg? And she was like, well, when we had you diagnosed, we had you medicated as a kid. And it worked fine during the day. But when you were sort of coming off that day's medication, you would have strange side effects. And one of them is you would very, very aggressively punch yourself in the leg. I was like, oh, so a 5-year-old Greg gave me nerve damage. Okay. Again, should I maybe have known this 30 years ago or 20 years ago would have been nice.
And you've been on a journey of like you've forgiven that, 'cause, like, it was never held from you with any intent. But from what we've spoke about, there was no malice to it. And actually, your mom's knowledge of what it was at probably the same as what yours was. And mine was before we even knew, because I don't imagine the doctors give them much context. They just described and went, take that.
Yeah.
Because at that point, and this was just UK statistics, but during early 90s, which that would have been, there were only 26 children in the UK medicated. 26. Wow. As early as 1990, and that is the statistic so I've seen it online, and for anyone that is Unmasked by Ellie Middleton, that's where I got that from. It's in there. There's some shocking statistics, and it just made my head go, because we're both born 88, aren't we? Like, so for
87, but close enough.
87, yes. So same school year. That's where I get confused with that. So 87, 88. And within 5 years that they put us 92, 93, that wouldn't have shifted much. So actually, only, let's say, doubled. 50 people, 50 children were being treated for and medicated for a condition which we now know could be as much as 20%, if not more, of the population. It just blew my mind, because it's so relevant to everybody, but more so us, because that's our generation cycle. That's where it's sat, and that's where it should have been seen.
But like to your point, like finding that out, having that conversation with my mother, hearing those facts out loud. Now, yes, my first reaction was anger. Obviously it was. And I grieved. I did. But there's something freeing about getting that information, because now half of that truck makes sense. And I can empty half of it now. I'm like, well, I don't need to be worrying about this anymore. And now I can continually focus on my marriage and the other mental health problems that I'm dealing with. And now the ADHD realization defines so much of my childhood that I can kind of drop so much baggage and we laughed. Perrie and I were in this situation where we were always sort of tense, trying to work on this. And that evening after that phone call, we laughed. We sort of mocked that reality. We sort of sat there dealing with the grief, and it allowed us to unburden ourselves.
And with you, Perrie, then, so you said earlier, which I know was tongue in cheek, but also probably informed by how little we knew, you kind of went, oh, okay, so now you're going to tell me you've got ADHD, and that is the problem?
Yeah.
Like, and then all of a sudden this Pandora's box opens and you start going, oh, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah, I feel
what were the first kind of things that you kind of heard and you was like, okay, maybe there's something here?
My brain just went to all of them.
Well, I think go with what you were going to say then. Go with what you was going to say.
That's what I was going to say. There's just so much. So the way that I think about it now is that Greg was a Coke bottle with the lid still on. And life had just shaken it all up. And that conversation with his mum opened the lid. And he had already thought about it. He'd already seen it on TikTok videos from Chris Hood and all of the other people. And all of a sudden, it's gone everywhere. And so I was sat there like, whoa, because it all made so much sense. But I didn't at first know how to deal with that. Because on one side of it, my brain was like, ADHD, that's an excuse. Because I was still closed off. And the other side of it was like, yes, I completely understand. But also I think I've got it too, but I don't want to tell you that. And so there was it was a lot very quickly that we dealt with. And I think that we did this thing. So every week we both had our therapy sessions separately. I've had them in this room, he had in his room, not usually at the same time. For the first few, the other would leave the house so he had privacy and then come back. But then after every session, we sat down and we talked about it. And that was something I could never imagine, because when you see about counselling and therapy on TV shows and movies, it's all hush-hush. You don't talk about therapy.
You leave it in the room and you go and live your life.
And so I thought that that's what it's going to be. And then we just started talking about it. And it was, my therapist did this with me. And mine told me about this. And all of a sudden, we started bonding more than we ever have before. And that included the ADHD. That included talking about, I've got this thing that I deal with, and that's like this, which is an ADHD thing. And then we talked about that, and it grew and it grew and it grew. And from there is when I wanted to learn more about it, at the same time that Greg wanted to see if he could post on TikTok. So we combined the two, and I thought, I'm going to make a list of all the things I want to know about ADHD. And I'll ask him, hey, Greg, I have a question.
And this is the beauty of where things are. So that first video, then, Greg, you tell me you were shatting your pants. What was the fear?
So it wasn't just fear. It was a whole bunch of inconvenient timing as well, because we had been healing really well. And I was determined, out loud, to prove to the imposter syndrome that I could do a thing, whatever that thing may be. And I said to Perrie, I just want to be able to make one TikTok video. And we were like, all right, let's get there slowly. And that day, I was so depressed. I think it was emotional fallout from a particularly difficult therapy session, rough stuff at the job we used to work at, and it was just so much. And Perrie had already known that if she doesn't push just a little bit, I'll sit with it, not do it, and then feel awful because I didn't do it. So she sort of gently forced me. So the reason I struggle with that, to go back to that first video, is because I'm seeing that Greg. I'm seeing the things you guys don't see, because you're looking at a stranger and I'm looking at myself. So it wasn't even fear. I wasn't really scared of what was going on. I didn't think I'd be able to get the words out. But
have you gone back? Obviously, it was only Wednesday we spoke. Have you looked back at that first video?
I haven't watched it again in a long time. I will, because I need to get through that process.
I
But
try.
When you're ready, and if you're ready, I would encourage you to, just based on an experience I had. I hope you experienced the same, because I just forward focus, and forget. And actually, I saw a version of myself that only I would have recognized. You saying that is so relevant, because only you know where you were at that time, and it just gives you that growth kind of perspective. It's mad. Like I did it by accident, and then went back in a rabbit hole on myself. But when you're ready, buddy, when you're ready, like, the time will come. But so Hey Greg came about, and you did that first video, and it felt like you'd achieved something, you'd proved the imposter wrong, but you were still learning as you go then. How did that then become the thing that is Hey Greg?
So we decided pretty early on that I didn't want to know what the questions would be. So Perrie didn't ask me questions at home normally. She said, right, I've got a question. I'll let you know. And I would just basically, that just tells me that it's coming. Whatever this plan is, it's coming. And then those first 10, 15, 20 videos, you can see with some of them, I really don't know what's going on. Like, Perrie just jumps out around doorways and goes, "Hey, Greg," and I'm like, "Okay, I'm engaged
It's
now."
the shopping one that always tickles me, when you walk through the door and your face just goes, "F you, please. What do you want from me?" Like, I can see in your face. It's almost like your main aim in life was getting home through the door into safe space. You got there, and it was no longer safe. She got me.
The thing you don't see is me sat on the sofa looking out the window to see if he's coming yet, with my phone in hand, like, is he? Yeah, he's here. Just to make sure I get the shot the way I want it.
Because the format worked so well because I like info dumping information on people. I like teaching people. So when Perrie's like, "I have a question," and asks it, I'm going, well, none of the other stuff matters now. I'm like, oh, I need to answer this question because I need to share this information with a person I care about. And that's how it's sort of come about. But the Hey Greg of it all, that's Perrie. That's all Perrie.
And I think something that kind of happened when we were talking the other day is I didn't realize, and I never knew, that actually if you flip the script on what was happening, Perrie was learning based on what you had learned as you went. So actually, early on, there were some questions which was actually Perrie indirectly going, "I need to learn about this. I know who can tell me about this. The man that has just hyper focused on everything he needs to know."
Yeah, and
I went back and looked, and you can see that. And in my head, you're behind the camera going,
I was.
Ooh.
I still sometimes am. But the thing is, it also helped me asking Greg, because I needed to know about it from his perspective, because I wanted to learn about him more so that I could learn how best I can, if I needed to, be more patient or be more empathetic or be more understanding toward him. And so it was kind of like a triple whammy, where it's creating content for other people to learn from. It's helping me learn, but it's also helping our relationship as well.
And an interesting thing that Greg said was, without you, that wouldn't happen, and probably still wouldn't happen, because even though Hey Greg as a concept has evolved and it's become this kind of educational and community platform and TikTok and whatnot, in Greg's mind it's still okay, because ultimately it's still just a conversation between him and his wife. And that, like, I didn't know whether to cry, scream, shout, cheer, or what. I was like, I'm feeling emotions. What are they? But it just got me in my feels.
Yeah, I think, well, I can't really talk about how Greg feels about it, but for me, it's safe, and I'm just asking him stuff.
It definitely was the way and is the way I dealt with the fear of putting myself out there, right? Because the videos are out there and people, some of those videos people love or really don't love. You know what I mean? So there's points of contentions, but when it got tricky, when there was a lot of negativity coming up on the videos, that kind of like in the comments and stuff, I reminded myself that actually I'm just having a conversation with my wife. After that, I can't really control it. That's not my world. And I don't, whenever Perry asks me a question, I don't think, oh, I'm talking to thousands of people. My brain just goes, I'm answering my wife. That's it.
I love that.
And then posting it, that's just letting it be free. That's a thing where you have to just go, well,
You cut
whatever
the
happens.
string and let it float.
Yeah.
Like a balloon.
And with that, and we'll, like, if we start this with Perry and then go forward to Greg. So ADHD is a massive part of us, and it, like, we've discovered that. But in a relationship, everything can't be down to ADHD, and initially it can feel that way. But I think what we spoke about is how do you work to separate the ADHD and the human? And I think I give the example of a previous experience for me where someone was trying to help me and saying, this must be your ADHD, and their intent was a good place, but it also then felt like I felt like dehumanized and just categorized, and actually I lost the human in me. But how do you work that? How do you work out what is potentially as a result of an ADHD or a symptom, and what's just a human thing that two people have just got a niggle?
So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think if a situation like that is going to come up, I think that it's usually between two people that care about each other. And so I think if you are aware that one has ADHD and the other doesn't, I think that the education and communication needs to be put into it, so that there are certain things that you can recognize as being a reaction happening because of a neurodivergence. But I don't separate Greg from his ADHD, but Greg also isn't his ADHD. It's part of him. It's a little ball that he carries around. It's part of him, but it isn't who he is. But I will always lead with empathy. So we have situations, even now we have situations that happen where one of us won't understand the other, and he may trigger my RSD, or I may trigger his, like, stuff like that happens. But the way that we deal with it is to talk about it openly enough, knowing that whatever comes out of our mouth isn't with malice. It is only with love, and it is only meant to be able to either understand, I don't get what's going on in your brain. Help me out. Please use your words in a way that can go in my brain. And it's nothing to do with or without his ADHD. Does that make sense? It just is. And so if somebody were to be blaming behaviors that you might have, your ADHD is causing this, in a negative way or a derogatory way, then if they're not willing to understand and put in the time to educate themselves or let you educate them, then maybe they're not the right people.
I think something that you mentioned, which can be an absolute killer when it comes to relationships and neurodivergent relationships, is the contact thing. Yeah. Like, sometimes all you want to do is be touched, hugged, reassured and comforted.
Yeah.
But actually, like Greg's learning more about himself, where there's potential other neurodivergent conditions there, where it makes sense as to sometimes why the sensory elements for Greg may be more elevated because of this other bolt on. And actually, you mentioned like that feeling rejected initially, but actually that change when you understood he's not rejecting the person, he's rejecting the contact from anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that took time. But there was one moment where I got my nighttime zoomies, and when I get these zoomies, I want to either throw things at Greg I don't know why, not in a nasty way, but just in a
Catch.
yeah. Or I want to just be a blanket on him. Just a blanket. I just want to be on him. I want to be. If he could absorb me into his skin, that would. Oh, that would be perfect. So when I have those moments, yes, Paul Greg, quite often Paul Greg. When I
I'm
have
seeing scenes from Alien. Like this is freaky.
But if I have a moment like that and Greg is really done that day and he can't, his sensory overload or whatever, even if he's just like, "Do you know what, I can't even," he can communicate with me now in a way that doesn't make me think he hates me and we're going to get divorced.
Baldy's just said exactly the same. Sounds like some alien stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so some questions relationship-wise then. So why is it important? You mentioned about learning and knowledge is power. Why is it important for both the partner and the person, or both if neurodivergent, to learn together and to educate? Like, how does that change the dynamic of a situation if you're both learning together, you're both moving forward together? Like, how did that make things easier, and why is it important? Greg?
Okay. I was waiting for Perry then. Yeah, I mean, every person is this sort of, if you take like a Venn diagram of like the nature of your birth and the nurture of your upbringing, right in the middle is you. And no two neurodivergents are the same. If you're in a relationship with a neurodivergent, you're not exactly the same person. You're not going to manifest your neurodivergences or your traits the same way. Those nuances are the difference, right? So it's all about the small stuff. The nuance of Perry's zoomies versus my sort of calm, like desire for calm late at night. That element has to be looked at, and you have to communicate and say, well, you get zoomies and I don't, and I can't really handle the zoomies, and you need to zoom. So how do we allow you your space and mine without clashing in any real way? You have to learn about your partner. I mean, that's the whole point of a relationship, is it's this person. It's not all people. It's this particular one right here that you need to understand them deeply, because you'll find that for lack of a better term, when the shit hits the fan, you will adapt on the fly. If you don't have the information you need to do that adaptation, you're not going to help that person. You're going to hinder them.
Or yourself.
You're just chucking more shit at the fan and it's going to get more messy.
Exactly. And I think that especially the generations before us, and maybe some people our generation and onwards, there is this stereotype where people fall in love and get married, and then they just sort of slowly start to drift away from each other. They talk shit behind each other's backs. They don't show each other respect anymore. They start to see that person as an antagonist, or at least a hindrance in their life. They seem to forget that they love this person and you married them on purpose. You're supposed to grow together. And the only way you do that is the communication and the education. I mean, I info dump on Perrie every time I learn something new. Anything that interests me. Some of it's kind of dark. Like, I learn all sorts of weird stuff. And I'll just tell her.
Yeah, sometimes I'm unable to take in the information. So we've already set up a code phrase that I can say to Greg if I'm not in a headspace to be able to take on his info dumps, and it is fire bad, tree pretty, and I will say that to him, and he goes, "Oh, I understand completely," and he'll hold it for when I'm able to take that on. And so I think that open communication is so important before as well, because if you don't. But I also that I know that we're probably coming on time, so I'm not going to take up too much. But when you're talking about, you know, the you get married and blah, blah, blah. When we're kids and we're growing up, all our, like, I don't know, for me, Disney movies, there are loads of different types of movies. There's the meet each other, fall in love, get married, and live happily ever after. But nobody ever tells you how. Nobody ever tells you how to live happily ever after. What is happily ever after? What does that even bloody mean? And so as you were saying it then, it started to make me mad, because I'm like, there's no guidebook. Kind of like when you hear about new parents and they don't know what I don't know what I'm doing. Nobody knows what they're doing. And it's the same for long-lasting, healthy relationships. And that comes for romantic ones or not. Because for me...
Everything, friendships, family, love.
I would quite like you to be in my life for a very long time, please. As in Paul, not... Obviously you, not you. But,
thanks. Well, tonight's the night we tell everybody that we're actually trying something new and we're going into a throuple. This is why we've done it. No, we've not. I'm lying totally.
This is what happens when the credits roll, guys.
We haven't told Greg yet.
He kind of knew, and if he didn't, then
I certainly suspect.
I'm okay with no contact. Just friendship for me.
No.
So, okay. So this has all blossomed and it's developed as and puts forward, as we all know, Greg and Perrie. But separately, you have now you've come together and you continue to walk alongside each other. But your knowledge and understanding of neurodivergency and your neurodiversity has taken you both on a similar step, but in your own little places. You've got you together in the middle, but you're both championing each other. So, Perrie, you've recently kick-started something in the workplace, which I think is something you should be proud of. I hope you are. I know you are, and you should be, is what I'm probably the better thing to say. Tell us about then. So, Squirrel Club.
Yeah, I am a part of the leadership team of one of our employee inclusion groups. And I joined this employee inclusion group after Greg's revelation from his mum about his ADHD and us starting that journey, because the one that I'm part of is the Disabilities Allies and Caregivers group, which includes neurodiversity. So it was actually another place for me to learn stuff. And then came the opening that they needed somebody else for their leadership team. So I joined and realized that actually there wasn't enough stuff there for people with ADHD. So I created the Proof Point, which is a company I work for, Proof Point Squirrel Club. And we've got our own little Teams channel. We've got stickers. In fact, I've got one where I made the logo. You see the sticker there? Little squirrel. People put this squirrel on their bags or on wherever they want, and other people in the office will be able to see, oh, you're part of the Squirrel Club. So they can immediately start talking to each other, knowing that they've got a like-minded person there that understands that they've got ADHD. So it's taken off quite well. I'm quite pleased. And I just want to bring more normality to it.
Normalcy, I like that though. That's a purism.
Yeah, that's one of mine. Thanks.
And Greg, you've taken the lead with Perrie's support and kind of championing you in a community kind of drive locally to you in bringing people from the community together in a neurodiversity meetup.
Yeah, so I noticed there wasn't a whole lot of neurodiversity friendly things in our neighborhood. And I really wanted there to be, because I think, we do so much digitally like this on TikTok, but it's nice to be able to let people know that they can see someone face to face and really sort of engage with like-minded people. So we've started doing a monthly neurodiversity club with our local council people and people from the neighborhood. We basically have a location and we say, right, we're going to be here on the Sunday at this time, join us. And the local pub has jumped on board and said, listen, we'll have a table set aside for you, you'll have your own space, your own sort of quiet, as it were, and you guys can engage however you want to. And it's not like it has a regimented direction, because come on, neurodivergent, but it's the ability to bring people in the community together and say, look, you're not alone. You're probably surrounded by a bunch of people who don't understand you. Come and see us, learn and engage, and sort of free yourself of that masking and that burden. And with the intent of hopefully helping people feel less alone, less put upon, as it were.
It's kind of breaking my own rule here, going to the comments, but someone's just said, and I think it's one of your friends from school, Perry, saying they're up for bringing Squirrel Club to their workplace. And when you told me about it, my gut just went, oh, I need to do this. And I
love
think
that.
it could really be like a legacy of actually how do we bring it to a workplace. And what you've done is you've opened up the door with a concept that actually we can then go and apply. And I love that. And what a way to be. And with you in the community, you've taken it from behind the screen and in a household to a group of neurodivergent people sitting in a local pub, just being neurodivergent together. Like people will look and they'll be like, oh, they're a quirky bunch. Like, damn right we am.
Yeah.
Every last one of us.
We am. And so that meetup that we do in our small area is small compared to what's happening on June the 1st.
Yes. So, brainchild, passion project. What's going on the 1st? What we doing?
So we're going to do a bigger meetup. The first, hopefully, of many. We are going to meet. So Perrie and I are going to go to Manchester, to a nice public park in Manchester. And you're all invited. And you can all join us there. And we're just going to hang out with fellow neurodivergents and see each other face to face and really engage properly. Because that's the thing that occurred to me early on in this journey for all of us really on TikTok is, I love doing this TikTok thing and I love doing these lives and I love talking to everybody. But I love seeing people face to face more. You know, I was born in the 80s in South Africa. This is a thing I'm learning. I like to stand in front of people. So the idea of everybody going together in June to just take up space with each other.
Can I also point out that we are aware that this is only obviously in the UK.
Yeah.
If there are people that are not in the UK and would like to have a look at what we're up to, we are going to be going live throughout the meetup in the park so that you can at least see the madness from afar. Because one thing that I think is very important with anything neurodivergent is inclusivity. And
it'll be like big day 2 in the park. Paul's going live. Greg has been on live for 25 minutes. Perrie has got the zoomies.
And Alice is running after her.
Yeah, Alice is skipping with a rope that she's just prepared. I don't know where my accent went. I went from Big Brother to Gary Barlow.
I'm hoping this first one goes well because the idea is, because we know that geographically a lot of our followers are not in the UK. So we'd like to do more than one of these things and we'd like to do them in other locations.
Hey Greg on tour.
Hey Greg on tour, but we got to do one to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are some posters that I will share after this. So you two share. And James, Ava, you've got the posters. Jen's out, so she won't be seeing this. But yeah, if we all blast it on, share it, there'll be many of us around. I'm looking to arrange something for the evening. When we get an idea of who would like to carry on in the evening, I'm going to try and put together some fun activity, kind of dopamine rich and not too spoon draining, where we can all kind of enjoy a different angle of us, because it's probably going to take it out of us, the excitement of being together. So actually something that could lift that dopamine could be fun. Yeah. So this draws to the end of Behind the Mask, featuring Perrie Belle and her husband, ADHGreg. But in normal fashion, at the end of every podcast, I did a video asking a question, and the responses really lifted me, enlightened me, and humbled me, and I've carried it through to these. So Harry's just offered a massage session. Sorry, I'm down for that.
I saw that as well.
So for both of you then, so if you could give one message, we talk about our inner child, and actually probably sits with us forever. Like it just sits there. We just make it a little more calmer. If you could go back and talk to yourself as a youngster, what message would you give yourself and why? To Perrie.
Don't lose the weird, because it's all right to be bloody weird. It's all right to be quirky. It's all right to be you. Don't lose it. Don't put it in a box for anybody. Just keep it out for hanging for everyone to see. That is what I would say.
And Greg?
The only thing that sprung into my head there was the ability to say, you are more than they tell you that you are. I could have really used that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for being on here. I think there's been a lot there which people will relate to, get knowledge from, understand. From me to both of you, I'll say it on here and I say it off. You know I love you dearly. I'm blessed to have created solid life friendships as well as online friendships and stuff, and you two are very much some of my very old OGs, and I love you both dearly and appreciate you, so thank you for doing this with me.
Thank you for having us.
Love you very much dearly too. You are a light in our lives, sir.
You are as I've said before, why I love you is because you walk with me when I'm walking forward. You don't try and take over. You don't try and force me backwards, push me forwards. You grab an arm and you walk with. And there's been several times, not just you, other people as well, where I've really needed that stability. And you've never not been what I needed you to be, even when that was actually nothing. It was just the knowledge that you were there, and love you both for it.